the dark, I play my dreams. Permaculture flows like sweet streams. I'm the daddy with the know-how seed. Creating the world like it's meant to be. Permaculture, P-I-M-P, I'm the king. Wrapping up in everything. Bringing change, making it last. Join the permaculture.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to episode 294 of the Permaculture Pimpcast, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. The only Pimpcast on planet Earth where we discuss permaculture, preparedness, and practical living, and probably going to be talking about some prostitutes tonight. But hey, y'all, you're going to be talking to a real deal, real life American hero, somebody I am just thrilled to have on this show today. Tell everybody we're live, y'all. And if you are in here right now on the live show, please hit that thumbs up. It tells the powers that shouldn't be to go ahead and start suppressing us immediately, because they can't allow this information to get out, especially the way she's going to be dropping it tonight. And folks, just stay tuned. I mean, she's going to blow your mind with the information she has. If you thought Dane Wigington was knocking that out of the park, and Dr. Artist, and by the way, if you haven't heard that interview, you're going to have to watch it on Rumble. There is no way on God's green earth they're ever going to let that thing see the light of day on YouTube. All right, y'all, coming up real soon. Okay, we got a homestead processing class. I'm going to be leading it up with Ben from Renewed Homestead. We're going to be processing some sheep out there. Go to renewedhomestead.com. That's going to be on March 29th. And we're going to show you how to do everything from the rooter to the tutor, how to handle these animals. And the method I teach you is going to apply to any animal. I don't care what it is. It'll work on a zebra, an elephant, a cow, a pig, all the way down to the sheeps that we're going to sheeps. We're going to be doing. Yeah, I've been in North Carolina just a little bit too long, y'all. All right, y'all. Also coming up, remember March 18th through the 22nd, we got the Shalom Temple is going to be putting on a 5-day immersion event. They even have single day tickets if that's something you can do. And Barbara O'Neill's going to be headlining. Jonathan Otto's going to be there. Both of which, by the way, got me kicked off of YouTube for mentioning words that I just told my guest we're not allowed to talk about. Things that I've talked about a zillion times. Anyway, if you want to know how to heal yourself naturally, you're going to want to be there. Be there, be square. Also, May 2nd through the 4th, Mountain Readiness. I'm probably going to do another tactical food forest class. Say that 10 times. And that's going to be May 2nd through the 4th. And go to mountainreadiness.com. Look, if you ever wanted to meet a Green Beret, a Ranger, a Sapper, you name it, Delta Force, we're all going to be there. So definitely go check it out. And I'll be your friendly neighborhood Sapper on site. Redemption Shield, 10% off with promo code PERMA. Farm Connection, 10% off with promo code PERMA. Look, y'all, I'm just going to kind of bust through this because I'm going to get into it with my guest. And then EMP Shield, $50 off with promo code PERMA. Remember, 27-year IBEW journeyman electrician. When things go stupid on your house, look, you're not going to the club, you're going home. Or if things get stupid at your house, you also got to consider the fact that, they're going to cover you for 25 G's if anything gets Kentucky fried downstream in his house. So go check them out, empshield.com. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other people in here I'm forgetting right now, but that's not important because, folks, I know a lot of you right now, like I said, hit that thumbs up if you're just coming in and tell everybody we're live right now. Okay, a lot of you have seen this video. It's gone viral. I mean, I've talked about it, and I'm just blown away that I was able to get her on the show. And you're basically seeing a chemtrail pilot that just landed being interviewed. It's gone everywhere. And in fact, I would dare say it's probably being suppressed at this point because the powers that shouldn't be can't let this information out. Well, the person that did all that is on the show with me tonight, and I want to give a big hello and shout out to my friend, Mellow Cat. How you doing?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. You know, this whole movement now has connected me to such incredible people, and hearing about what you're doing on the farm and the harvesting and the food forests and the resiliency. This is the direction I've been going for the last couple of years. And I didn't have a green thumb, but I've been trying to do more and more of what you're doing, becoming less dependent on the system. And it looks like you're pretty awake to what's been happening with the food and the geoengineering and all the things that we're surrounded by today. So It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. I mean, Kat, I was just talking to my friend Eric Sider, renowned permaculture designer out in your neck of the woods, and he's telling me about what's going on with the egg prices and how crazy everything is in California. And look, I mean, everybody thinks that, oh, we got a new administration, party, happy days are here again. Well, I didn't see the prices go down.
No.
So,
No.
and honestly, if I'm going to do this work, like I was telling Dr. Artist the other day, I produce food on this farm that is better than anything you could ever dream of buying. But really, how good is it? Because every single day, and I've been going on like nobody's business, they're dropping this garbage from the sky. And I've been sitting here, before we went live, you were telling me how you watched that last video where I said I was in a little bit of a funk.
Yeah.
And I'm coming out of it. Believe me, I'm coming out swinging.
Yes.
And the honest truth of it is being in a point of frustration where I'm talking about this stuff, nobody's believing it, or, some people are believing it. And then I'm sitting here arguing. People want to know about who killed Kennedy, but they can't look up and see who's dropping this garbage from the sky. And then all of a sudden I come across your work, and I ain't going to lie, you're absolutely blowing me away. You are the definition of what I call a true American hero. And you don't need a gun. You don't need to be in combat. What you did is actually put some wind in the sails of all of us out here that are fighting, trying to get this information out. I can't even believe how many people you probably woke up with what you did. So with that said, Kat, why don't you give us a little bit of background about you and what brought you into this work?
Oh, it's a layered history. I mean, I'm still, sometimes I'm in shock that it all even happened, right? It blew up. It's the first time I've ever experienced anything going out to the masses. But for the last 5 years, I've been very, very outspoken and proactive about what I'm learning. This kind of this top-down control, like the boot on the neck, the bioengineering of the food, the poisoning from all of the childhood intervention injections they're giving to our babies. And so I'm a mother. I think that's when I really started to wake up, was when you finally bring life into this world. Suddenly it's not about you anymore. It's not about the scene and the places to be, and you're nurturing life. And so that was really what jump-started my awakening. Having to learn about, how am I a good mother, and how do you care for your child and give them the best experience? And then you're also looking at the world with a fresh new lens. You're looking at it through the eyes of this new little human being that you're bringing up in the world. And it renewed my curiosity about everything. So, over the years I've learned, I've talked about this in previous interviews, but it was when I had my son, I had stopped working. I was living sort of, in a fog most of my life, just enjoying life. I was living out of Los Angeles. I was flying corporate jets. I was a flight attendant. So I was living the high life. It was a great, fun time. And suddenly I'm home with a baby, and I have a chance to just sit back and watch the skies. And it struck me that, you'd watch the grid patterns throughout the day. And at this time I lived in Fresno. I think Fresno's hit very heavily as well. This is the fruit basket, right, of the United States. And I was very aware of like the chemicals they were spraying, the chemicals in clothing. And then I was watching the skies, and finally I asked somebody, I just said, do you see what's happening up here? And a woman at the grocery store, she was the cashier, she said, oh, those are chemtrails. And that was the first time I'd ever heard that term. And that was the beginning of this particular journey with going after, the chemtrailers, because once you wake up, I found Dave Wigington's website, and what I learned about was horrifying. And but then I gave it a rest for a while, because initially when I would talk about it or bring it up on social media, I was mocked, scorned, made fun of. So I dropped it. And then life goes on. Then I learned kind of the hard way about the pharmaceutical industry and all of the interventions they give you under the guise of your health and wellness for your baby. And I gave my son, I just handed him over because I thought I was being a great mom, and that we had some health and neurological issues that it took me years to finally connect the dots, that it's very possible that I've caused this to him, because I brought him to every well visit. He's had so many, what children receive today is infinitely more than what you probably had, and definitely what I had as a child. They're just pumping him full. So fast forward to 2020, then I was very proactive in speaking up for our right to choose. I didn't like the mask. I didn't like the what was coming, the mandatory jabs that they were forcing people to get. I mean, basically work. You can work or get fired. Like don't work with us if you don't get the shots. And they were really, I saw that was a real wake up call for me because you saw the divide and the fear, and you saw how children were growing up, with their parents behind a muzzle, and they had 6-foot distancing sticks at school. They had plexiglass around the children. And it made me, I felt like it was actually watching people's behavior and watching them blindly go along with this sort of behavior was actually the most terrifying for me, because I felt like I was surrounded by zombies. They were asleep at the wheel. They had lost control of their mental faculty. And I felt like that's where I felt really uncomfortable. And I really do wonder now if, it's the programming and the brainwashing and the media, it's the messaging over and over and over. And I think people are actually, they're sort of in a trance. And I partially wonder if maybe some of the chemicals that we are breathing in or the drugs that we are taking are also dampening our ability to perceive the world as perhaps it really is. So anyway, it's a long story. I could talk for hours, but yeah, I've gotten to this point where I just had enough. I started using flight radar in 2020 because I was very active in protesting. I was at board meetings. I had a bullhorn. We, marched through a superintendent's office because they had their Zoom meetings and they weren't listening to the parents. And partly I wanted to track trails, but mostly it was because I was concerned about the FBI. I heard that they would set up a shell company to surveil protesters. And I was always wondering, like, who's over my house, and then also who's leaving that trail. So that was the first time I thought, I'm going to look into this. And I found an app, something called Flight Radar. Okay. And there's other wonderful apps. Everybody's saying, oh, well, this app is better and this one's better. I just found something that was available online. It was free. And I started just poking on different aircraft on the, I use it on my browser. I think it's easier to use. And that was the beginning of my investigation into like what aircraft is going where. And just by starting this, I learned about so many projects. I learned about Project Loon, Google's high altitude balloons, Aerostar Defense, which is like, and Raven. And I was watching like an old Navy surveillance blimp travel from this point to this point. And I said to my husband, I said, this is a Navy surveillance blimp. What are they doing? And he said, well, the Navy's not using it to surveil. They couldn't do that. The government can't surveil the citizens, but they could do it under a private company. Hence the public-private partnerships, right? So you can use the Navy's surveillance balloon under a private company like Google, right? And this balloon, this surveillance blimp, landed in a former Air Force base. I think it's called Castle Air Force Base. So I was investigating aircraft everywhere and was very savvy with learning how to look up registration numbers finally after some time. So, so I'm so sorry. I've talked about this so many times. I just wonder how much I've already said and what I haven't said. Ultimately, from 2020 and on, I realized I need to get out of the system. This is a toxic system. Like, keep me out of the hospitals. Get me out of this woke mindset county that I was living in. I wanted to get back to nature. I really wanted to get back to the earth. I realized the importance of needing to have food security and quality food and clean water and peace away from the towers that were going up and the surveillance cameras that were going up. All these things were happening so fast in 2020 and on, right? All the towers, the cameras. I felt more and more like I was in an open air prison. So we moved out to the mountains, and we're 2 hours from the closest airport. I love it out here. It's, and I decided I'm going to start a garden, and I'm going to try to get away from big food corporations. And we have a great local market up here that sources from local farmers. We have amazing farmers markets out here. So I'm very grateful to be here. But as I was out putting together my planter boxes and preparing my garden space, there again I was watching the lines in the sky spread out, and I just hit my limit. And I had been told previously not to talk about chemtrails because I was fighting the COVID bioweapon jabs, and I was very outspoken about that. I was very knowledgeable about the revolving door between industry and regulatory agencies and industry. And so people would say to me, don't talk about chemtrails because you're going to lose, you have such an important message to warn people about these shots. So I didn't. But then finally, just a few years ago now, I decided I'm done not talking about it. We need to put this on the table. It's very clear to me that we are under attack. This is ecocide, genocide. They're coming for your land, your health, your mind, and so I started a Telegram channel. And I called it California Chemtrails. My thought was, I'm going to start sharing all my photos, and I'm going to try to get more people to start talking about this. And I want to make, because a lot of people I think didn't talk about it because it was so kooky. You were kind of fringy. People, they were like, oh, I can't take you seriously anymore. So, and then thanks to Dane Wigington, he was one of the first people that I found talking about this. I looked at his examples, and I saw that he tested his rainwater, right? They were testing samples. I didn't follow him closely, but, so I thought, well, I want to know what's in my rain. I want to know what's coming down on my soil, because here I am trying to grow my food and, raising a family. And so I started that process, and it's been a very lengthy process, learning, finding a lab that would do it, finding out what should I test for. And then once I got my first results back, then I didn't know what they meant, right? I didn't know, like, what are the units of measurement, and then what are the inhalation or ingestion limits of these various metals that I found in my samples. I'll just show you an example here. I have to cover up something here. But if you look here, you can see just some of the numbers. You have aluminum, barium, magnesium's high, chromium, copper, lead, lithium, titanium, vanadium, zinc. So this is in our air. And something else, and I usually show this article, Blue Cross Blue Shield had an article published in 2020 saying that early onset dementia and Alzheimer's are on the rise for people in their age 30s to 40s. And you have to wonder, where is it coming from? Now, I've learned that a lot of it's in here, in these injections. Mm-hmm. But then you're ingesting it, you're breathing it in, you're drinking it. And I'm all for choosing whatever you want to put into your body, but that's the one thing I can't control. I can grow my food. I can live away from the city. I don't need to use your devices or participate in your little circus dance, but I can't stop what they're spraying over my head. So we've had this channel now for a few years, and I just started documenting. And then after I tried researching, like, what are the limits? What does this really mean? How bad is it? And that took a while. And then I finally realized there has to be an agency that oversees this. There's an air pollution control district. I'm going to contact them. And what I found then was, you're stonewalled frequently. You reach out to get some answers from a local, air pollution control district. They should have some answers. They didn't have any answers. First, it was this process of weeks of waiting around for a response, calling multiple times. The Tuolumne Air Pollution Control District head was also, I found out, doing something with agriculture. So she had these two different titles. So she really, I don't even know what she was doing as this Tuolumne Air Pollution Control District leader. So I got my supervisors involved. I started sharing my rain samples with them. And one of my supervisor at the time was my county supervisor, was very supportive. She finally got in touch with the Tuolumne Air Pollution Control District manager, or I forget her title, is it manager? I forget. And said, these are concerning. Do you have any answers? And the woman said, well, we only test for particulate and ozone, right? So PM, and we don't have a testing facility for these things. And she'd stonewalled me for months. And I finally said, well, why doesn't she tell me this? And then also, who's higher up? Who's above her? What department can she speak to get the answers for me? Because if she doesn't know, then it's on her to get the answers for me, because she's serving my county. And so then she mentioned the California Air and Resources Board. So I then said, will you please put me in touch with somebody from the California, we call it CARB for short. And then I started another ongoing, year-long discussion with a senior staff pollution specialist. And at this point, I had been taking samples. And also, let me back up a little bit. On my chat, we have people sharing information all the time. I then was notified about the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Library. It's a weather modification library for non-federal weather modification projects. So this is not the military stuff. This is not the big private stuff. There's a lot of different ways to modify the weather. There's, and you can call it geoengineering, solar radiation management, whatever you want to call it. But I then discovered that our county had a cloud seeding project that was happening over our heads. And so I began investigating to see, are these metals part of the flare? How are these metals, where are they coming from? And lo and behold, I did find that I found the seeding materials. And the flares contain ammonium perchlorate. That's toxic to breathe in, by the way. Zinc powder, aluminum powder, silver iodide, copper iodide, ammonium iodide. So the zinc and aluminum are used as propellants to disperse the silver iodide.
So these are the flares attached to the yes. vehicle. Okay.
So they have burn in place BIP and ejectable flares. And they will just, and so I was tracking aircraft as well. But at this point, I didn't have any proof of what I was seeing. I was taking screenshots of aircraft patterns I was noticing. And, but then I learned about this seeding project, and I made some phone calls. I did a Public Records Act request. I did a few more. And I learned that one of the aircraft I was tracking was indeed one of the seeders, right? When I was looking at flight radar. And so it's been a lengthy process. But long story short, they do it for like 3 hours at a time, and it's right over my house. I can hear them. It drives me crazy. And for a while, I was feeling very invigorated that we were going to maybe put an immediate stop to this or figure out how to apply pressure. And so I've been building the written correspondence. I've been taking notes. I've been looking at California, I think they're called water codes, and they talk about all the steps that the weather modification organization needs to fulfill. They need to tell your board of supervisors that they're doing it over your heads. None of my board of supervisors knew that this was happening, and they're doing it right over our heads to benefit an irrigation district partnership just west of us. So it's the Turlock and Modesto Irrigation District, and they provide water and power to a lot of people. So it's actually a bigger deal than I thought. So and then come to find out, this is happening all over California. It's all over Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming. They're dumping metals everywhere. And as you're probably aware as a farmer, you know how aluminum suffocates plants. It stifles growth. So this is, not only are they causing harm to wildlife that depend on those plants, but also to our food supply. How are the bees impacted by this? How are we impacted by this? This has been running unchecked forever. And what's wild is that everyone thought I was crazy for saying that there was even cloud seeding until like 2 years ago. The media started sort of slipping it in like, oh, it's wonderful, we can make it rain, how exciting. They've been doing this for decades and decades. And this particular project, over 30 years, based on an outdated environmental impact report, and all they looked at and talked about was silver iodide. They're like, well, it's not that big of a deal. We have, it doesn't appear to, exceed these amounts that are naturally occurring in nature, and we think that it should be relatively safe. Well, they haven't done any sampling since in this area. I'd like to know, why hasn't our Department of the Water Resources Board or the California Air and Resources Board, why haven't they been testing for these metals? Their excuse was, well, we don't test for anything unless there is an emission of concern. And that's when I said, well, here's my rain samples. This is a signal that these are emissions of concern. I want you to do so. That's been my process. And it's very slow going. And I've had a lot of support from Save Our Skies. Ray Nett has been drumming up, different things we could maybe try, like notices of liability and, and kind of getting people to come together and brainstorm ways that we can tackle this, and also legally. But I got to the point where there's so many things happening all around us. I research a lot of projects, by the way, Billy. So, I have my hands in genetically engineered mosquitoes. I have my hands in the surveying. We have a Canadian company also surveying us for minerals to help us achieve our 2030 goals, right? So there's that. And then we have a carbon capture scam funded by Bill Gates out here. So I literally am following logging trucks to get information. Like I drove back into the woods one day, an hour and a half drive, just to see where they were going, to see where they were cutting down. Because what they're doing is they're cutting down our trees to store the carbon. They truck the trees to Nevada and bury them in earthen vaults to store the carbon. So So I'm a little all over the map. Okay. Again, I'm curious about everything around me.
Hold on. Wait.
I know there's a lot to talk about.
No. You and I are going to get along great. I know the people out there that watch this show or listen to this show regularly, they're going to be like, okay, I think he's met his match here, because everything you're talking about, I mean, just about every single bit of it we've talked about on this program. And we talk about it consistently. And sometimes, depending on the nature of it, if it's of a medical nature, of course, I got to move it over to Rumble, because if I say anything about certain things, all of a sudden,
I totally understand. Yes.
Yeah, you totally get it. But honestly, walk me through, because I think there needs to be a call of action, a call to action before this is all said and done. So I understand that you did a Zoom meeting the other day, and I think you were teaching others. If I'm not right, please let me know. Yes. You were teaching others how to do what you did. Now let's go back to, before we get into that.
Thank you.
Why don't you go back and tell everybody what went on the day that you were able to confront this pilot? Because honestly, I've been Pat Miletich, former UFC world champion. He's a friend of mine. And half of these planes, Pat told me, are flying out of where he lives in South Dakota. Mm-hmm. And
Mm-hmm.
And he can honestly take me to those places.
That would be fantastic. I would take him up on that.
Yeah,
there's something about South Dakota. I don't remember the details, but there's something about, I think they can get away with a bit more. I noticed that those high altitude balloons that are used by Aerostar Defense and Google, a lot of them have been out of South Dakota.
Yeah, he said that is like ground zero for most of because it's so remote. I mean, where they have this stuff.
Yes.
And South Dakota isn't the most populated state.
Yeah.
So Pat was telling me, I mean, I swear it was just days before your video went viral. And Pat was telling me, he's like, dude, you know, most of that stuff happens right out. He says, I'm like, I think he said maybe an hour away from where these flights are coming out. And so all of a sudden, your video hits it blows up. I put it on X, and of course, X has got us suppressed. You know, I'm putting that thing out everywhere we possibly can. On YouTube, I'm telling people about you and what you did, because I'm sitting here thinking, for days and days, I mean, for years now, I've been wanting to get my hands on one of these pilots and to be able to do you have any idea how many of us researchers out here were wishing and hoping and praying that we could do what you did?
Oh,
so maybe you could tell us how that unfolded.
Yes. So I just did. So I've been back to back. I've been my days have been full ever since this video went viral. So I haven't had a chance to really catch up with myself yet. But so I did a tutorial. I'm putting them out there. I want to empower people to learn how to read the skies, because you can actually track flights and look for patterns over your head and start to narrow it down, like who's leaving the trails, where do they take off, where do they land. These are all
you can actually track the flight of those things. I thought they were like not even on radar, but you're telling me we can.
A lot of them aren't. No, so for the cloud seeding, they're flying between 10 and I think 15,000 feet. So they are. The Canadian company that was surveying us didn't have a transponder on. The only reason I got that tail number was because I took a picture with my camera when he flew right over my house.
What? They were that low?
That low, because they're measuring. They've got all these electromagnetic measuring gadgets on the plane, and they're trying to find, again, the wonderful minerals, and they're getting the lay of the land. And I like to joke, you know, just keep your eyes on this, because this could be where the next fire or flood happens, right? They find some goodies under us. But no, so I've covered this probably better or more effectively in other interviews, but I had been tracking this flight. I have so many screenshots and videos in my phone of the sky changing, of the planes I'm seeing on flight radar, because I've been trying to understand what's normal, you know, where are the commercial flights? What are the military flights doing? What's routine for this area? Because again, I've been mostly concerned with just my property. That's where I can focus. When you look at the map on flight radar, you're going to be overwhelmed by how many aircraft there are out there. But when you help bring it into your home, your little slice of life, and you watch the activity, then you'll better understand, you know, who's leaving these trails. And but like you said, a lot of them don't have transponders on. I wonder if they might be unmanned aerial vehicles. I also believe personally at this point, because I've read so many documents and I've connected some dots, that it's likely military is involved in some way. But I can't prove that. But this is one little slice of the puzzle that I can prove. I have the arrangements, the contracts. I've attempted to contact the weather modification. So the company that's doing this is called Weather Modification International, also known as Weather Modification Inc., Weather Modification LLC. And I didn't bring all my notes with me today, but I had been reaching out to them to learn more about what they're doing, because I'm trying to figure out, why is there titanium in my rain, right? Because the flares that I'm reading about that they've used, the ice flares, I want to know, have you switched it up a little bit? Because I believe they've done work in the United Arab Emirates, and the United Arab Emirates has been using titanium dioxide nanoparticles. And if you even just look into the health effects, I mean, they used to spray us with titanium tetrachloride. It's horrible for people's health. But they've been doing this for a very long time. That was in the 50s. So I'm trying to get to the bottom of, like, where do these metals come from? How much can I attribute to what you're doing? And so I took a lot of samples, and it's just undeniable. This is constantly in our air, which means it's in our water. And it's really frustrating for me. So I've been trying to build and document and build evidence. And Raynette was working on getting like a lot group together to kind of figure out how to tackle this. And nothing's fast enough for me. So of course I'm impatient. And it was just one of those days. I came home after taking my son to a friend's house, and I heard him over me, and I went, "Oh, is this the guy?" And I went, "Oh, there he is. Oh, he's already been out for 2.5 hours." So I missed him, because for a while I've been wanting to confront him. And then remind me to tell you, I confronted a different pilot about another topic. Okay. So this is not my first dog and pony show. And so I went to bed, and it was around 10 o'clock, because I heard him around 7 p.m., I think. And then around 10 o'clock, I heard him again. And he was coming out for round 2, and he was flying out of the same airport. He takes off out of this airport, comes over on my head, does his figure eights, and then goes back to the airport. So I called my girlfriend, who's just as frustrated as I am, and she was asleep. So I contacted another friend, and I said, "He's out. You want to go to the airport?" And I've asked, there's a farmer out here. I love him. I told him before, I said, "We got to go to the airport." He's like, "Let's be rational. Let's just attempt to address this, through the board, And but I'm done. I want to talk to these people. I'm frustrated. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of being, dragged along somebody's, I'm like, let's just go right to the heart of the matter. Let's just go right to that plane, talk to the guys doing it, and let them know how we feel. So that's what we did. And my friend said, "I'll be there in 25 minutes. So we left around probably 11 o'clock and got down to the airport, which is about an hour away. And I wasn't really sure if I'd be able to get through. It's my first time going to this particular airport. But we watched him land, and I got out of the car and I just went for it. The buildings were dark. It was the Modesto Jet Center. So it was a smaller airport. And I'm just looking for any way in, right? And it was like my friend says, divine intervention. I see a line guy through the window, and it's dark in the room, and you can then see through to the tarmac, the other windows, facing the tarmac. And I was like, there he is. So I knocked and I waved, and he cracked the door, and I said, "Oh, I'm here to see, the crew." And so he let me in, because they're not expecting an everyday person to know when a plane is landing, to know the tail number of the plane, and right. So of course he just let me on in, and I went to the bathroom, and I texted my friend and said, I got inside. So he came out and filmed from the outside of the locked door looking in. So you'll see a clip of that out there. And I just recorded audio, because I didn't want to be confrontational with my phone in his face. I wanted really just to speak my truth, to tell him what I was aware of, and to hear what he knew. I wanted to see, like, how does he feel about this? What does he know? What does he not know? And I just spelled it all out, and you heard the conversation. It's out there, and I told him how I felt. And I was actually very calm, because in this moment, that if you shout and yell and curse, he's going to call the police or security, and you'll be taken out of there. Right. So I just wanted to let him know sincerely, person to person, to give him the benefit of the doubt, that perhaps he's got feelings and he just has not been told, right? Maybe it's the first time he's heard, but I just needed to say how I felt, to express my concerns, and you heard his responses.
That's what floored me the most, Kat. The thing that was most infuriating to me is you're sitting here, and I was like, man, I don't know how she's doing this, man. I would have wanted to put this guy through a 5-minute flurry of fists.
Yeah.
And here you are laying it out saying, look, these are the chemicals. You guys, you're dropping this over my house. And I don't know if it was that guy or the other guy next to him. And his response was, well, you drive a car, that's polluting the environment. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? To
Yes.
compare the two is insanity.
Yeah.
I was so infuriated when I heard, and right then and there, I knew that this dude was a first-class sociopath.
Yeah.
Right there on the spot, for you to respond this way when you were politely laying it out here to where anybody should be able to understand.
Yeah.
For him to respond that way, said, okay. And I think when I posted that on X, I think I wrote, folks, this is what a psychopath looks like. I mean, this is how a psychopath would react.
Yeah.
I couldn't even, of all the things that was, yeah, I think everybody was blown away by what you said, but what was more shocking to me is his response.
Yeah.
I mean, these people know that they are dropping poison on other people.
Yes.
And they don't care.
Yeah. Or they believe that it's benign, and because they've been doing it for so long. So that was, I have another situation. There was a pilot, there was an aircraft. They've been spraying us not only with chemicals for cloud seeding and metals, but you're probably aware, you know, they're looking for the next pandemic, right? So there's like, they've got the genetically engineered mosquitoes that they're pretending they want to release to save you from the disease spreading insects, which is baloney. We'll get into that. That's a whole other show. And then I was watching like the West Nile threats. They're like, oh, West Nile's on the rise. Triple E is on the rise. Birds are dying from this. And it was, you know, it's all baloney, just like the 2020 baloney, all based on fraudulent tests, all lies, right? They just want to keep the cycle going, keep you afraid, keep giving you their diagnostic tests that are fraudulent, and then keep telling you that you have whatever virus, this through this, so they can give you their next bioweapon coming down the pipeline. That's how I feel about it. And so anyway, they're spraying us like roaches with toxic, get this, adulticides. And their intent, the adulticides are organophosphate pesticides. They do this with fogging trucks, drones, and aircraft. Now, when I learned that one of the more local mosquito vector control districts was doing this, I then tracked, they told us where the spray alerts were going to happen. And this is where I dig in. So I had the map where they were going to spray. And then I got onto Flight Radar at the time that they were supposed to be spraying, and I waited. And I watched the aircraft that came in that direction. And then I identified the aircraft. And he was the one flying at 450 to 500 feet, spraying like this, just doing this, and covering this large swath of land. And he also went right over an ecological reserve that's meant to protect birds and wildlife. Now, what they're spraying is hugely toxic. I have the audio from that conversation, but I never shared it because the gentleman was very, very kind and very oblivious, really oblivious. A lot of these guys, I think, are probably just, they want to believe that what they're doing is benign because it's a paycheck. It's a job, it's a paycheck. They want their flight hours. They don't know where else to work. And they're, you know, so, but he said that organophosphate pesticides work on the nervous system and that they were used as nerve agents, he said, in World War I. And I said, well, then how do you not, I mean, he's like, well, we have it calibrated just to have to the right amount so it only kills mosquitoes. And I said, but what about the bees? And of course, as farmers, you know, bees are suffering, right? I said, what about the bees? Because it's toxic for bees. The active ingredient, they're spraying something called dibrom, D-I-B-R-O-M. The active ingredient is NALED, N-A-L-E-D, and that is toxic for birds, bees, butterflies, aquatic life, and people. So I said, how do you know you don't kill bees? He said, because I spray them all the time. And also his aircraft was registered to a Delaware trust. Okay. So this is how these foreign companies, these globalists hide. They register with a trust, like a Delaware trust. It was like Delaware something trustee. And so I wanted to know who's paying for this, who's doing this to us. And I found out the company he worked for is a chemical company. I have video on this and a Substack summary. But so he was being informed by the PhDs and the scientists that were paid by the chemical corporation, this global chemical company, to say that what they're doing is safe and effective. And then what you find out is all these global chemical corporations, these companies have these subsidiaries, these little, other branches of different chemical companies. And all of them are sponsoring the American Mosquito Control Association, which gives recommendations to all of the mosquito vector control districts. And what I found is that the general managers at the mosquito vector control districts are buying the same chemicals from the sponsors of the, so it's this, again, the revolving door.
Yeah.
Chemicals, pharmaceuticals, always this revolving door. And it's always wrapped in, we're doing this for your health and your safety. I'm sorry. I mean, give me a break. So I hope that more people. So what I want to say is, there's something that I'm feeling hopeful about is that people actually liked what I did. I am amazed that people actually, that they didn't say, well, what a crazy woman, but they actually were like, yeah. I mean, that's exciting for me because we have so much power. We have so much power. And these people, these minions and foot soldiers taking the blood money to do these jobs need to be addressed. They need to be confronted. No matter how you do it, they need to know that we're watching them. Because I think a lot of them get away with just hiding behind the name of their company, hiding behind the name of some corporation. We're always pointing at Gates, and rightfully so, because Gates is a genocidal maniac. But people are taking money from Gates's, nonprofits. They're taking money to do the carbon capture scam, to put the self-monitoring pills in cows' stomachs so that we can make sure the cows are healthy, right? He pays for all of this stuff through his many NGOs and venture capital funds. And so we now need to confront those who have taken the money from these organizations, these billionaires, these corporations, and hold them accountable.
Kat, the thing that's blowing my mind right now, and this is part of the massive frustration that I've had, and honestly, it's taken your work and, honestly, a lot of prayer and just realizing that I just got to stand up and start kicking some butt in all this. In all of this, I'm realizing, by and large, look, the American Revolution was essentially fought by 3% of the United States population at that time. Okay, so it's always a dedicated, irate minority that always does anything that's worthwhile. It's always been that way. It's always going to be that way. Yeah. You're among that group. I'm among that group. And, there's a shortage. And honestly, a lot of the people I know, like my buddy Steve in this chat, Ariana, there's been a number that I've seen in this chat right now that I know would stand up. And there's a number of others that I don't personally know, but I do know these folks. Yeah. And they're actually out there doing what they can to move that needle a little bit. And and that's all it takes. But honestly, it was something that you did that I think just kind of put wind under the sails of so many of us out there, because they just seemed untouchable because they're flying in a plane above us. Mm-hmm. We just always assume that, what do I do?
What can I do? Yeah.
What do I do?
Yes.
And you did it. And that's what's blowing my mind, is that you did it.
When you get mad enough, I mean, this is my mission. Like my husband was like, gosh, you're upsetting yourself over all these things. But I said, I need to learn. I need to know. It's important. And if I've been begging for people to raise their voices, now is the time to actually just be bold, because what they're doing to us is so egregious and so out of line, and it's mockery, right? You've got now this Kristen Peck is her last name, who, is the president of the company that sold their bird flu vaccines to this country. I mean, they're wasting egregious spending on stupid pharmaceutical products and diagnostic tests for all of this manufactured garbage. And I said this before, I think that this is what we have: problem, reaction, solution. We're being poisoned on multiple levels: food, water, air. Okay, they're spraying us like bugs. The food is bioengineered garbage. They're making you sick so that you'll be dependent on their disgusting lifelong need of their drugs. So, it's time that we just forget what people think anymore, and I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid of what everyone's like, be careful, they're going to come to your door. And I'm like, if I don't stand in my truth and call the bullshit when I see it, pardon my French, then what's the point of all of this? Like, I have got to, I'm going to get loud about it, and I'm going to defend my home. And by the way, you said earlier, you don't need guns. Well, I think we do, because you look at what's happening in other countries, these so-called democracies, and you see that they have completely stripped them of their freedoms, right? They want the back door in through their Apple phones. They've got the surveillance cameras that are behavioral surveillance. They're keeping tabs and smart machine learning on everybody's behavior. What do you drive? What do you eat? What do you think? And people have been arrested for their social media posts. I do think everybody should get armed and know how to use it. You better be prepared to defend your own home and your turf. And I'll be darned if anyone comes to my door and says, excuse me, ma'am, we hear you have chickens. Because I'm hatching chickens, by the way, now. I'm hatching my own, unjabbed, completely untouched, healthy little birds. None of my birds are sick. I'm drinking my raw milk, and I'm eating my eggs, and my cats eat raw chicken. We're all happy, and I'm just so blown away by what I see in the media. Don't watch it, turn it off, folks, if you still listen to it. It's it's just mind-numbing propaganda and brainwashing programming, right? But it's so beyond that. I don't care what anyone thinks anymore. I'm speaking truth to the power that's causing all of this ecocide, genocide, and abuse.
Well, when you hear "side" in it, that usually means death. So,
yeah.
And what are they spraying? Pesticides. So, Kat, I got to ask. I've been going on. And I'd really love to hear your opinion on this. I've been going on ever since Trump got in office. I live in Western North Carolina, the very place where they engineered that hurricane.
Yeah.
I'm at the epicenter of where that happened right now. Okay.
Wow.
And Dane Wigington, for those that don't know, folks, go back and watch the interview I did with Dane, where he proved beyond all doubt that storm was steered with NEXRAD radar towers, and also the stuff that Kat's talking about, that they're dropping from the sky. It entangles in the storm. They use the NEXRAD radar towers to push this thing around. So I'm right at the epicenter of where all this happened. Now, check this out.
Yeah.
For 30 solid days, and I got the video evidence to prove it, this was the bluest blue, and Dane told me it would happen.
Mm-hmm.
It was the bluest blue skies that you've ever seen in your life. Not a single chemtrail for somewhere between 21 to maybe 30 days after that storm.
Yes.
It was a blue that I don't recall seeing in recent time.
Yes.
Anyway, check this out. Ever since that 30-day mark, the spring, and ever since Trump got in, the spring, I don't know if it's that way in California, but where I am in Western North Carolina, minus today, because I have technology. I have a chemtrail buster, which I'll have to tell you about here in a little while.
I'd love that.
Yeah, I had a kid drop one off, and of course, there's cloudy skies on every way, around me, but where I am, the sky is blue. And of course, I'll put that video out hopefully by Sunday. I know everybody's going to ask me, where are you getting this chemtrail buster? Well, it took this kid 3 months to make me one. So,
wow.
It works. And I'll put that video out on Monday, folks. It's literally punching holes in the chemtrail. So I said all that. I didn't mean to go down that rabbit trail, Cap, but I got to ask.
Yes.
Is it just me? Because out here, ever since Trump got elected, and I'm a political atheist, I'm not left, I'm not right. I see them all as bought and paid for prostitutes.
Yes.
My offense to the prostitutes out there. People. Anyway, the chemtrailing is 3 times worse now under Trump than it ever was in my life. Is it that same way? Is it unfolding this way in California?
It's actually, I would say for me in California has been really bad. And I don't know if it's different for different states, but what they started doing out here was just similar to the COVID alerts. You get the alerts like, get your vaccines, keep your distance, get your test. You get those emergency alerts on your phone. They were abusing that system. Well, we started getting that for weather. So when we were out here as well, we had a tornado in California, and we had hail that was just like massive balls of hail that fell, and crazy storms. And actually my very first sample was hail. So we collected these big blobs of hail, and the kids were wearing helmets outside, And so we saved it. That was the first sample. I kept that in the freezer. And then that was when I decided I need to start testing, because it was very bizarre that they were giving us those alerts. So it's been bad here in California for a while. So I did notice, though, it was like before the inauguration, it was clear for a while. It was amazing. I mean, it was leading up to it is what I noticed out here. Now the days come and go for me, and I'm not always following world events anymore. I don't watch the news. I'm not regularly listening into anyone's podcast anymore. I kind of march to the beat of my own drum, right? I'm coaching basketball. I'm hatching my own chickens. I'm a busy woman. And so I have to check the dates because I take pictures almost pretty regularly, but I felt like there was a stretch of maybe 10 days where it was just beautiful blue. And I was like, oh, and you feel the difference in your mood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like your mood, you have energy, you're ready to go out and seize the day. I'm saying to my son all the time, like, go get that natural sun when you can. Go out, get out on that patio and go lie by the, get out, skin to the sun, right? Just soak it in when you can. And, but no, I mean, we're actually today is pretty nice. We had some stuff a little earlier, but I think it's moving. So right now it's pretty nice outside. It's been warmer these days, but with the geoengineering, that they can prevent precipitation, right? That they could induce drought. And part of what I think is happening too is because, I don't know if you've talked about this on your show or if you feel the same way I do. I feel like this is all a manufactured, like pushing people off the land. They want us in smart cities. Okay, Absolutely. So you're on the same page here. Oh, great. Yeah. So I feel like, and we had a few Rockefeller-funded resilience centers built out here, right? We got funding from the Rockefeller Foundation, came through HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and we had it was a national disaster resilience competition, and our county got this funding to build these resilience centers, and you have to wonder why. And what I've been saying for years is, what's coming for this area, right? Because we're in the beautiful mountains. It was old gold country, right? And now we've got people looking for minerals under the, Canadian companies that are rumored to be working for a Chinese firm. Again, that's in a Substack. You can see that on my Substack. So yeah, there's so many things happening. I don't know where, I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. Hey, you know what? That's cool. Let's change gears a little bit because you are in California now. I just got off the phone a little bit earlier with another person who's highly suppressed on X, and that's Christopher Key of Vaccine Police. He's out there right now. He's in LA and he's boots on the ground, probably the only one of very few reporters out there reporting on the ground what's happening. And Kat, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, no, let me take that back. I saw it on 9/11 and I saw it in the other places where directed energy weapons were used as well. Yeah. Cars flipped over for no reason. Green grass inches, or you know what? I'm a permaculture designer. I think I know a little bit about trees. Yes. You don't just go have a house burned down literally 5 feet away from an orange tree and still have leaves and oranges on the tree 5 feet away from a house where it burned the flipping chimney.
Everything.
Okay, so I got to ask you, I mean, because I know we don't have a whole lot of time together, I got to at least hit you up on this. I mean, do you have any thoughts about what went down there in LA? Because
I think a lot of it's manufactured. Now, can I prove it? Maybe not, but you can connect enough dots to see, right? So in Los Angeles, this was, as you probably know, where they were going to host the Summer Olympics. They wanted this area to be all walkable and public transport friendly. I know they're talking about building some rail there. So all of these, I think it's all by design. Again, you move people off the land by burning them out and flooding them out, right? So you create the drought. Maybe you're dropping metals, you're dropping chemicals to increase the chance of the shrubs and the greenery to just explode and blow and burn hotter. But then there's, I had Robert Brain. Have you heard of Robert Brain? He's a longtime arborist and botanist who's become So I reached out to him because we live in a high fire risk area and everybody's insurance is getting dropped. People are losing their homes because they can no longer afford to pay for their home insurance, right? And it's like what they're doing to us is atrocious. So that's one of the other things I care about is they're finding all of these ways to put the squeeze on us. You talked about the cost of food. We're talking about the carbon neutral goals that they were talking about. They're putting the squeeze on us in every way possible so that we will be forced to do what they want us to do, or we will willingly adopt it because they convince us through their propaganda, right? And their public relations spin. So, I think manufactured out there. Can I prove it? No, but just look at Robert Brame has done an excellent job. I had him come out and speak to my county, and I really wanted firefighters to listen to him too, because I want them to start documenting. I want more people to start documenting, because the more of us that are watching and aware and taking photo evidence and making notes, and because your photo is a timestamp, the less they will get away with. Forget the mainstream media. We are the journalists. We are the only ones that are going to get anything done. So so I brought Robert Brame out, but yeah, I think those fires are definitely part of the agenda. And it's not to say that there weren't some people out there also starting their own fires and having fun with it, or maybe they were plants, or who knows. But it's all too many things lining up to force people off very precious land, just like Maui, right? And I think Chile, same thing. I mean, so you're forcing people, yeah.
Yeah, Western North Carolina, they just using a different tactic,
Oh, and I was tracking, by the way, NOAA they had like an article, I think it was like 70 years of seeding hurricanes, right? Their 70th anniversary of seeding their first hurricane. That's what it was. It's on their own website still, and I've saved a copy. And they use, I think, it looks like a Lockheed Orion, or something like that. It's got the 4 propellers. It looks like a big military plane. And they fly it into the storms, and that's what they flew into, these building weather, bodies of weather, and they seeded the hurricane. Well, guess what? Before the last couple of hurricanes that were coming toward Florida, I saw the same type of aircraft, and I have screenshots. I'll send it to you later. It was like a Lockheed Orion, I think, flying around maybe 14,000 feet. Don't quote me, but flying into the heart of this swirling weather, right? Because I'm on the Windy app and I'm looking at the weather patterns. And then they had another NOAA aircraft. It was like a Gulfstream that was like 45,000 feet above it. And I shared with some chats, and they said, oh, they're just taking measurements. And I said, I don't really know if I believe that anymore. We've been lied to about so many things. How do we know they're not in there directly seeding or somehow steering in some way? And I know that there are people out there that'll say that that's just insanity and you just don't understand weather. But listen, they told us they were able to do it. They caused a lot of damage 70 years ago, I think in Georgia, that the hurricane picked up speed and power and really took out some precious land. So, they always tell you, it seems, they tell you what they're doing. It's in your face. It's like mockery at this point. So I'm all over the map.
Magic. They got to tell you what they're going to do before they do it half the time. It's called lesser magic. If they don't do it, they think the spiritual karma is going to come back on them. I know, right. Man, it looks like we could do a 5-hour program talking about some of this stuff.
I know. And I'm sorry, because I just, there's so much to cover. When people say, how did you get started and how did you get into this? Well, I have my hands in so many things. And
that's awesome. That's a great thing, Kat, because honestly, all these things, the more you're into it, I've been at this thing a long, long time, and you're going to realize, and of course you're pretty smart. So, I mean, I'm sure you already have that, just like you said earlier, that you're thinking this one thing over here is just its thing, and then you realize there's these tentacles and these webs. And speaking of webs, let's talk about some of this spider silk that you found.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about the spider silk.
No, because the reason I'm asking is I've actually witnessed some of this stuff, but this was years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I didn't know what I was getting into. I was like, man, what on earth is this? And that was back in Kansas years ago. But why don't you tell everybody about this spider silk, because this is a real deal thing.
I know. Okay. So, and then the poison fog I was going to say, but that's
no. Let's get it all.
Let's stick to the silk.
Okay.
So a girlfriend of mine reached out to me. It was in October, and she said, Kat, because they know I watch the skies, I'm into all this stuff. And she said, this really strange silk, the strange webbing is falling from the sky. And she was out on, she was kayaking, I think in Monterey Bay. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Well, the very next day, I'm out driving around and I see it falling from the skies. And I have my own videos. This stuff was like 30 feet long. Okay. And some of it would clump. The visible stuff would clump, but then you'd see the strand. And I've got the videos and I've shared that on my Substack as well. And I was like, it's really happening. Like, what is this? Right. And people, of course, were quick to say after a couple of days, nobody knew what it was at first. Even the Monterey Bay regional director, whatever, nobody knew what it was. The parks director, they were like, what is this substance? And then the media went with an entomologist who said, well, I theorize it is spiders. So, they're ballooning spiders. And so then everyone was like, oh, it's spiders. No big deal. So everyone moved on with their lives. But I didn't, because what I saw was not coming from spiders. You don't find strands falling and dropping and catching on fences and catching on telephone poles and go, oh, that's just spiders moving their eggs. Because I caught it directly from the sky. I don't see any spiders on it. I don't know if there's eggs in it, but I was catching all of it. And so then, of course, like I do, I took samples. And I didn't know what to do with them. I brought them home, and then I was contacting all my friends. We talk about these things, and I was like, this is so weird. And I showed my husband, who's sort of a little bit of a skeptic, right? So he's very pragmatic and very by the books. He'd rather not. Anyway, I won't talk about his life, but so I'm a little out there for him. But I just said, what do you think this is? I said, is this really spider silk? What do you think? And he's like, oh no. And he's touching it. He said, it's not spider silk. He goes, maybe it came from trees. Well, then I showed him my videos, and he said, oh, that's not from trees. He goes, maybe that's from rockets, because they have rocket launches out here too. So anyway, he was curious, because it was definitely not from spiders. And if you look at it, it's the most interesting material. So I then sent, I have a friend, FM8, he investigates things under microscopes. He's been doing this for years, and he's, and sharing his findings. And so I said, would you take this and take a look? And he said, yeah. And so I sent him my samples. And so then he shared my sample also with two other people, Freedom Warrior, or I'm sorry, Unhackable Animal and Will Micronaut. Anyway, they've been looking at these under a microscope, and what it appeared to be, and we can't say what it is because they weren't doing the chemical tests, okay? But it appeared to be almost like these crystalline tubes with fluid in them, okay? Very bizarre. You can see all of that. There's a part 1 through 5 on Substack. You can go to my Substack, and then I link up to FM8 and his investigation. And, we're not experts. We are just documenting, right? If more people just started getting curious again. Well, then there was a great interview that Raynette just had with some researchers, I think, out of Europe. And I think I was going to say Switzerland, but I'm just going to say in Europe, the same thing was happening there. So they have been collecting samples, and they took it a step further. They actually did the chemical analysis. They tested the fibers. So these are, what they discovered was, these are not natural. These are like some kind of don't quote me, you should just listen to the interview. But basically what they believe these things to be are delivery systems for chemicals, biological agents, whatever. I mean, they describe it. But what they're asking for people to do is just start documenting. And apparently these spider silk strands have been falling for a couple of decades. I was unaware. This is the first time I've ever seen it. And maybe that's just because the more you're aware, the more you actually open yourself up to seeing all the things, right? Like the veil's been lifted. And
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'd seen the interview with, I want to say it was some Scandinavian folks that checked this stuff out. And then I'm wishing now that I never touched this stuff. And I'm sure you are too.
I had gloves one time because I did have gloves in my car for cleaning. But then I did touch with my bare hands, but I was really mindful not to like put it toward any like nose or mouth, I touched it, and then I went and washed my hands after that. And so far so good, knock on wood, nothing's mutated out of my backside yet.
Well, yeah, if you if it's like that movie Aliens and you got something popping out of your chest, you all know what time it is.
Yeah.
So talk to me real quick about this. I know we can't go into, man, I have got to have you back and talk more about this.
I know we should. And it's really hard because it really does all tie together. I should have just stuck to what I did with this pilot. I want to encourage everybody. Oh, go ahead. No. You can do so much more. When you apply pressure to these folks, they want to tuck their tails and run. And that we can talk about with the mosquitoes. The general manager that was promoting this pilot project in California, Mosquito Vector Control District Manager, to partner with Oxitec, which is that biotech company that's funded by Bill Gates, and the Wellcome Trust. I'm sure you've heard about them too. Evil, nasty. Well, they were going to do their first release in California, but we worked really hard. It was me and a couple of friends. called every environmental organization to say, why aren't you on this? Get on this. We don't want this. Why aren't you fighting this, right? And then we put out calls to action. We had an opportunity to leave public comment for the Department of Pesticide Regulation, and there were over 5,400 emails of opposition. This man I called out myself, same way I did with this pilot. I asked him questions. I explained to him some of the research I had done, the concerns that I had, and I said to him, do you have a family? You know, do you have children? And are you even really aware of what you're doing? And he was so flustered. He was like, oh, talk to the EPA, talk to the EPA. He just didn't want to take any responsibility for it. And I put his face everywhere, and his name, Mustafa Debone. Hi, Mustafa. Put his name and face everywhere, and I put his number and the emails, and I called them out. And guess what? Oxitec quietly withdrew their research application. They didn't release in 2022 when they wanted to release. So if we stay on these people and we expose, again, the minions, the small general manager of this district and this person over here, you know, hold them accountable. We can't go after some of the big billionaires out there, right? We can't reach them, but we can reach the people that they're paying through their NGOs and through their philanthropy, and we can go after those people. Okay, but what were you going to say now? You said
No. I mean, there's so many. I got an entire page full of notes that I got to ask you, okay, but I didn't get to any of them. So we're going to have you back at some point. But I want to give some people some hope and some marching orders, because honestly, you've done a lot of that already. So real quick, why don't you tell everybody where they can A, find you, and B, there's a lot of internet sleuths out there and people that would love me being one of them, to be able to do what you did and confront these people and put them on blast in the worst kind of way. So this course you did, this tutorial, how do people access that? And,
it's on my Substack. So if you go to Substack, and I'm at Mellowcat, MELLOW, and then cat is with a K, K-A-T, because Catherine is my name. So Mellowcat. The joke is I'm not mellow. I'm very intense, but that was kind of funny for me. I like to be funny. And so if you go to my Substack, my most recent Zoom tutorial is there for you to watch. And there I walked through the different, you can see it visually. I go through the map and I tap on aircraft. I show you where to look, to where to get that registration number, and then how to look up that registration number on the FAA's website. And from there, that's a very good first step. And this is a tool to be able to read the sky and identify what's happening over your heads. It gives you back, I think for me, it gave me back a little bit of control. Instead of it being such an unknown, horrible thing that I had no say in, now I have some say. I'm not going to let them get away with what I can capture. You know, if I can document them on camera, I can see what they're doing and they're impacting me and I've got evidence of it, and then I go and address it face to face with them. If I can, get in the door, that's what I'm going to do. That's my preferred action, is to go directly to the antagonist who's antagonizing me and to address my concerns and my issues.
And you should. So where else can they find you? I mean, I tried looking for you on X, and
everyone said you have to have I'm not on mainstream social media. I did start an X account, but I wasn't very committed, and then I forgot my password. I did just get back on, thanks to Ariana. She said, you really need to get on X and I can cross post to you or something like that. So I found my password, just signed back in and posted a few more things, but I'm primarily on Substack. I've been making videos though for 5 years on BitChute. Are you aware of BitChute?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So bitchute.com / again, MELLOWKAT, Mellowcat. And you'll find my channel, and there you can go through it's not very well organized. I like Substack because you can have organized titles and people can decide what to, I had to also, I found that even BitChute was very slow to upload some of the more out there videos. I don't think any platform's safe anymore, frankly. I'm not even sure about Substack because there was one video that they didn't play that was no longer available. So at some point I would like to start my own website. If I do, it'll be mellowcat.com or dot whatever. I'll get that at some point. But so that's where they can find me for now. And they can reach out to me there, and Substack and X, but I think I'm at mellowcatrs. And I can share that with you to put in the show notes.
Yeah, if you would, that would be great. I have got to have you back because honestly, there are so many doggone things. I know that I was going through your Substack a little while ago, and I was like, wow, she knows about this. She knows about this. Yeah, you and I are going to have a good time talking about a lot of this stuff. And honestly, you make me and a lot of other people in this chat feel less alone in this world, because I don't know where you are, but generally most of us out here and the people that are listening to this podcast, they know what's going on. They see it around them. And even some of the closest people in their lives, they can't even begin to have these conversations without them dismissing them as a conspiracy nut or whatever the case may be. So,
I want to tell you something that actually gave my peers a lot of hope. And I've shared this on multiple interviews. And again, I feel like today I've been all over the map because I've had so many conversations. I'm still not quite caught up on my sleep either. I'm just trying to respond to all the positivity, right? Because everyone's been very supportive. My family thought I was losing my mind in 2020 because I was starting to learn about 9/11. I was learning about SRA, right? I was learning about, say, ritual abuse, and I was learning about trafficking. I was learning about all of these things I had once been completely blind to. And that was I was drinking from the fire hose there, and it was heavy and lonely. And I had a few friends, thankfully, that said to me, well, we've been awake since 9/11, and, man, it's been a long journey. And I was so grateful for them, because my parents then started to worry about me. I'm very close to my family, like talk all the time. Okay. Almost every day. In fact, my mom just left today. She was here for a week. And I remember feeling like, because I love them dearly. And I was a little too intense for them, because I was trying to share what I was finding with them. And even my sister's family, she was like, it's too much. Maybe we shouldn't hang out anymore because it's too negative. But I was learning. And so I learned how to change my approach. I no longer tried to beat it to death. Same thing with my husband. I just learned to plant seeds. I would play interviews. I would time interviews at a certain point that I wanted my husband to hear, because he couldn't hear it from me. So I'd time an interview and fold my laundry with my interview on so he could hear the piece of information I wanted him to hear from someone else. That worked. Women and men out there. You just conveniently play this timed piece for you. But my parents, we were butting heads for a while. It was very uncomfortable. They didn't want to be around me all that much. They were very worried about me. They thought I needed help. And what's amazing now is none of them, because I said, don't get the jab. That was the one thing I was saying. Do not do it. It's nefarious. They're bribing people. There's no liability. It's completely experimental. Please, I love you too much. Do not do it. You're going to be fine, right? And they listened, and they waited. And they couldn't even tell their friends that they hadn't had it, because the pressure was that strong. They had everyone like divided over this, right? So they watched their friends do it. And they watched some health things happen. Now, and so that kind of helped them come along. And then also with the geoengineering, I was trying to explain it to them for years. Like, this is what's happening. Look at this. Here's a document. They didn't believe me until the last, I'd say, year and a half. And now my dad is writing to his representatives, right? Saying, what are you going to do about this geoengineering? And they're so proud of me. They had enough time to come around. So never give up trying to tell or reach your most loved ones. And and it's, I woke up. I'm a former progressive liberal. Okay. So I know that people are going to go, what? But I have hope, because we were brainwashed. We believed that they cared about the environment, that they cared about people, that they cared about, I was in a superficial world. I had no reason to dive deeper until I had my child.
Wow.
And then I really started to see that they were the worst kinds, because they, under the guise of health and safety and care and love and community, they were screwing everybody over, lying to them and poisoning them. That is the worst kind of evil I think there is.
Well, you're the worst kind of enemy anybody can make. Yeah. Honestly, when I'm looking at, it's funny to hear your journey, because to a high extent, I can relate to it as well. Now, I woke up years and years ago, but we wake up we emerge from Plato's cave in different ways.
Yeah.
And for me, it was one thing. Let's say I woke up to the Kennedy assassination. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oswald didn't do it. Okay. I'm originally from Oklahoma. Well, found out, you know what? The Oklahoma City bombing didn't go down. There is not a single major event that's ever happened in American history that went down the way that even the American Revolution didn't go down the way they told us.
Yeah.
And so
It's nothing is as it seems.
no,
Nothing is as it seems. I'm on an amazing journey. I'm like, this is so bizarre that I don't care if I'm a little kooky sometimes, because this shit is kooky, right?
It is. But that's part of the ride here, is that, it was true 3,500 years ago when Plato wrote the Critias and the Timaeus, talking about the allegory of the cave, that all of us are born in this cave and we see these shadows on the wall that we think are real. You escape your bonds in that cave. Let's say you're that one person that does. You go out, you find out, wow, there's a blue sky, there's trees, there's birds. You're seeing things that are wonders to your eyes. You go back down into the cave. You tell all the other people that are watching these little cave paintings, right in front of them. You scream to them, hey, this is not real. Follow me out of this cave. This real life is so much better. And then Plato describes that, if they could, they'd kill him. So it was true 3,500 years ago. It's true now. It's always going to be true. And the bottom line is that so many people are definitely comfortable, that the Matrix was definitely an allegory of, it was a modern day version of Plato's allegory of the cave. But so many people are so comfortable to eat that fake steak that they don't want their way out of it. But honestly, for you to find your way out of it and for you to be waking up people, that's why I said at the outset of this interview that you really, truly are an American hero, because honestly, there's so many of us out there, because people are saying, well, what do I do about it? What do I do about it? And then lo and behold, you come out with a video where you did something about it, instead of just getting a form letter back from your congressman or your senator when you write to them and say, I am sick of this. Can you do something about it? Oh, Mr. So-and-so, and so I'm like, okay, I'm going to write you 7 days a week.
Yes. Oh, yes. Go ahead. Say it again, because I just heard it. I listened to that. Say it again, because it's really true.
I'm going to write these people 7 days a week, especially in today. It's not like you got to handwrite it. You can sit here, cut it, paste it over and over and over again. And I'm hoping that we can create a groundswell of so many other people doing the very same thing. Because honestly, if we don't wake up and smell the corruption, we're going to all fall asleep drinking the hemlock.
Yes. I think everything counts right now. I'm going to bring a friend on who's been working really hard with her reps and legislative process in Idaho. She's amazing. She should be out there getting some coverage too. There are so many things you can do. I think what we can no longer do, though, is simply just reshare and reshare and reshare stuff without maybe a call to action. My call to action would be, you've got to do more than just resharing stuff. I mean, it's good to share information with each other to wake people up, but then what are you going to do about it, right? And that's where I really want people to get their hands in it. They can write those letters. They can make the phone calls. I did a call to action. I was, Bill Gates' Ken Caldera. He sits on Bill Gates' Breakthrough Energy Ventures. He's Carnegie. Ken Caldera talked about putting pathogens in clouds. And years ago, I called him to express my dismay and my frustration with what he's doing. He was one of the authors on the One Atmosphere United Nations document. Okay, so he's a total scumbag. But he was talking about, when he was at the Lawrence Livermore Labs, they talked about how you could put pathogens in clouds and then have it rain down over a population. Well, I saved that undercover audio. I saved my phone calls to him, and I told everyone, I said, give him a call. Here's his number. Bombard him with phone calls. Let him know, play his audio back to him. If you don't know what to say, cue it up on your computer or your iPad where he talks about because we want him to know, we know who you are, Ken. You can't hide behind your chief scientist title on Bill Gates' Breakthrough Energy Ventures anymore and get your undisclosed amounts of funding. So I am all about exposing these people. They don't like to be exposed. Shine a light right in their faces. Get their emails, get their numbers. Put out a call to action, say, folks, give these people a call, right? Directly. And again, Raynette's doing the notices of liability, Cal Washington, I should say. So there's different methods for different people. I'd rather write my own piece. I'd rather write my own statement or show up in person and keep the written documentation. That's good for me. And I like that direct confrontation. But for people that don't know what to do, you can just simply express how you feel and write to your local representatives. Please do come to my Substack and learn how to read the skies if you're interested in this. You're going to be blown away just by how much you learn. Just out of curiosity, you'll be like, what's this military doing? What are they doing over here? You'll see patterns. It's really fun. But you'll also see examples that I just shared. Another friend, he wrote a letter to the Department of Transportation, I think, to call them out. And so we can be we just need to be making everybody, as many people, aware as possible that this is really happening. We have the contracts, we have the evidence. In other interviews, I've talked about all the documents that I poured through where they referred to solar radiation management as needing to be deployed in a way that was similar to the Manhattan Project. And you know what that means, right? Compartmentalization, secrecy and compartmentalization. And these are the globalists having this conversation. So there's a lot that can be done. Don't give up hope. Never be quiet, and keep cracking away at your loved ones to help them see. And you can explore different techniques that work for your family or your loved ones, but eventually they will not be able to deny what's happening. It will be so obvious at some point, and it's probably going to take a little personal harm. Unfortunately, it takes getting injured by the jab before you question jabs. And so just keep speaking your truth, standing in your truth. Don't be afraid. Start growing some food. I can't wait to watch your rich compost videos, and I have a lot to learn from you. So I'm now a new fan.
Well, I'm definitely a fan of yours. I'm a fan of the work you're doing, and I'm a fan of your passion. And honestly, it's not enough for people just to talk about this stuff. When you went out there and did what you did, I can't even believe the shot in the arm it was for so many of us out here that are doing this work. And it was honestly the kick in the pants that I needed. So I'm looking forward to taking your doing your tutorial. Go check her out on Substack, folks. I'm going to do that too. Do you have a paid option as well on Substack?
I do now, and thanks to a friend that said, I think you're worth $80 a year. You know, you can do a monthly, which is I think $8. You can cancel at any time. You can do, I don't know all the levels yet. I haven't explored it carefully. I started Substack and BitChute was my thing. And then I was like, well, maybe I need to do Substack. So yes, you can subscribe. You can choose the level of subscription, and if you decide you change your mind, then you change your mind. But that would be amazing as well.
Well, I'll definitely be signing up for the paid option, because honestly, a workman's worth his hire, folks. And folks, if you have any, if you have any spare bread out there, look, she's doing this stuff on her own dime. She's doing all of this stuff. And there's so many of us out here that are rocking for the love, and for the love of our families, and for the love of the people around us, man. And it takes a lot of you out. It takes a lot out of you to do this kind of work, because it's really a thankless job unless you knock it out of the park. Like you said, you've been rocking along for 5 years, and then now all of a sudden you do something that resonates with so many people.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking back at your Substack. I'm like, oh, she knows about this. She knows about this. Okay, this is going to be really good. But I knew that there was never going to be enough time to cover it all. So we're going to have to, will you come back?
Yeah, I'll come back. I'd love to. And I'll give you an update on my chickens. I've been, again, hatching chickens too, because I saw the prices and I see they want to, give the chickens all these injections. And I thought, so I'm hoping to encourage people to do that as well. Just start small. And then here I am a couple of years later, and I'm like, I did my garden. I'm hatching my chickens, and it's great. So that's
there's a whole gang of people, other podcasters that were asking when they knew I was going to have you on. They were like, man, how do you even get a hold of her?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to, if it's okay, just stick around for a little bit. And I want to see if it's okay to link you up with some of these other podcasters that I know that are really, yanking at the bit to try to talk to you, because honestly, you've given so many people, especially those of us in this thing rocking for the love. You've given so many of us some hope, and I think you're just gonna keep hitting it out of the park. So your passion is infectious, and thank you so much for being on the show. Stick around if you would, because I want to give you some information and drop off a couple of things. Folks, go check her out. And I know there were a couple of people in the chat that were asking about Where do they go to watch that video? Look, you can go to.
I haven't been reading the chat. Oh my goodness, I haven't read any of the chat because I would get too distracted, Billy. So
no, don't do that. They're wondering where they can watch that initial video. So, do you have it on your X account, or is it going to be?
You know what? Let's see.
I know it's on Substack.
I know that I posted this on Substack, but then there are nice compilations out there. Some people did some nice compilations. Let's see. I got on InfoWars, which was wild too. That was when I was like, what? Anyway, I'm sorry. No, I know. I'm just, I'm trying to think where there's a nice clip. You can see it on Substack. I posted my audio. So when I got home from the airport that night, I had only my audio, and then my friend sent me the video of filming me outside. And it was like 4:30 in the morning, and I'm like, just adrenaline's pumping. I'm like, oh man, wow. And I sent it to this Telegram chat that I'm on with some friends, and they make videos, and they said, Kat, you got to get this out there. And I was like, I'm too tired. I'm like, but it was just, it was so great to be able to run into this one pilot who's over me, right? It was just so great to like see him and to surprise him and to, here's this woman at 1:30 in the morning. He's like, she's in this building here talking to me. So they then took some of my videos that I've shared, and then they made a couple of cuts that went out. So 2 different people made their own version with my audio and some of my pictures and video. And then that went out. And then a woman from Canada, Odessa, thank you, Odessa, shared a beautiful summary. And hers, like from there, it just was like a ripple effect. And then and I'm not on all these channels. So my friends have been sharing updates with me like, oh, you're here and you're here and you're here. So it's out there. If you search, I think it's a woman confronts chemtrail pilot. I think that's what they called it. That's been circulating, but
all right, folks, there you have it. I mean, look, if you ever wondered what an American hero looks like in my book, well, you just heard one, and she's doing some fantastic work over there. And I just feel so lucky to have her on this podcast. And we're going to have her back because honestly, she's gone down that rabbit hole for about as far as I have too. So we're going to have to break out way, way, way more stuff. Look, y'all, we just kind of wet your beak right now, but later on, we're going to knock your socks off. Until next time, as always, stay alert, stay alive.
Channel and nature, let the knowledge ring. We'll roof that run deep.